Hi Dragonflies, welcome back to Dragonfly Spirit Studio. I'm Lynn Bauer. This video is a supplemental video for my online Watercolor Skies and Clouds workshop. In the first project, we have a crescent moon in the sky, and in this video I'll show you 3 alternatives for how you might go about masking that crescent moon. In the first method, I'm going to use a little bottle cap that's the size that I want for my crescent moon, and I roll just one side of it into my mask and then place it on the page where I'd like my crescent moon to be and slide it just a little bit and lift. So let's see that close up. I pick up the masking fluid just on about half of the bottle cap and then tap off any drips. Place it on the page in the orientation I want for my moon. And then I'm going to slide it just a little bit to make the width of the crescent moon. For this method, the horns of the moon aren't particularly pointy, so I might clean those up at the end with a little bit of opaque white. The second method uses a watercolor pencil to draw some guidelines, and since we're using a watercolor pencil, we won't be left with pencil lines surrounding our crescent moon. I use a circle template to do this, and I simply trace out the outline of my crescent moon and then shift the template over to trace out the inner edge of the crescent moon. Now I'll take my masking fluid and pour a little out into a small dish. I do this so that I can add a few drops of water to thin it a little bit and allow me to paint it into a small area more easily. And then, as always, I'm going to fill my brush with some soap to keep the masking fluid from drying on the bristles. But I'm not going to use the brush to apply the masking fluid. I find it hard to use masking fluid in such a small area, so I'm using the brush to load a dip pen. I'll then use the dip pen to trace those watercolor pencil lines so that I have a nice clean edge on the outer rim of my crescent moon, and I can get nice sharp points on the horns. Then I can use my rigger to fill in the interior. You can't see it very well, but I can see exactly where those outer lines are because they reflect the light a little bit. They're somewhat shiny. So it's pretty easy to fill in the inside now. The third method is to use this masking fluid pen. It's actually a little bottle with a narrow nozzle and a nice little needle to clean it out when it gets clogged, so it actually works pretty well. And then I'm going to use my circle template, and it's important to have the type with these little raised bumps to lift it off the page. They're called inking dots, I believe. So drafting templates usually do have this, because otherwise the mask will creep under the edge. You might be able to get away with just tracing the crescent moon, but I find that these little pens usually start with sort of a blob. So I'm actually going to trace the entire exterior of what would be a full moon and fill it in. And you can use the pen for this, or you could use a brush. Now you might be wondering, now how on earth, this is great for the full moon, but how on earth is this going to give us a crescent moon? So let's look at what happens once we've removed the mask. We can actually paint in the interior using the same wash that we used on the outside. And the nice thing about this is with the crescent moon, often you see the entire moon reflecting by Earthlight, so this will actually give you that effect. In fact, here I've diluted my wash just a little bit to make sure that I get the appearance of the moon reflecting by Earthlight. So there are 3 methods that you can try for masking the crescent moon in Project 1. I suggest you do what I did and get some little scraps of paper and test them out and see which one works best for you. You can thin your masking fluid with water to help you do these fine details, and how much really depends on the brand of mask that you're using, so I can't really give you a general recommendation on that. Except experiment first and figure out what works for your masking fluid and your watercolor paper, and then put it on your project. And of course, if you don't like masking fluid, you can always just use an opaque white to add the crescent moon at the end.